And welcome to this Wednesday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest. Very happy to have you with us as we try to middle our way through the week before the Super Bowl game coming up in New Orleans. Great matchup. A lot of venom heading the way of the Kansas City Chiefs for some reason. I don't know how understandable that is. Used to be that everybody wanted to jump on a bandwagon of a winner. That if you saw a team that was a dynasty, the Showtime Lakers, you had the Golden State Warriors in the NBA. You've had other teams that were consistently in the mix to win a championship. And it seemed like people would solidly be behind them because everybody likes to ride the back of a winner. With the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm not sure. I mean, it gets as bizarre as these Taylor Swift conspiracy theories that the reason that the referees, in some people's opinion, seem to be overwhelmingly favorable. There's kind of a meme circulating right now. It's actually a clip of Andy Reid is standing on the field talking to the officials before a ball game, and they don't display or give you the sound on what's being said. But the caption on the picture, the video is, here's Andy Reid giving a pep talk to the officials before the game. People are debating, I mean, as if it needed to be examined by the Zapruder film. I think Zapruder himself has weighed in on this, whether or not that fourth down play where you had Josh Allen try and do the old tush push and gain a first down at a key juncture of the ball game. There was enough time left where it's almost impossible to say, even if he had been awarded the first down, what would have transpired. You don't know if on the very next play, you can never judge a subsequent series of events based on something that the outcome was questionable of. In other words, he gets that first down, for all you know, on the very next play, throws a pick six. It's entirely possible and changes the dynamic on the scoreboard and the entire complexion of the ball game. As it was it debatable? Yes. I mean, the one guy says it's a first down, the other guy says it wasn't. I've watched 1,000 different angles of that particular play, and can you really tell? I mean, can anybody say definitively, "Oh yeah, he made it" or not? But for some reason, whatever it is, people are rooting against the Kansas City Chiefs. Don't want to see him three-peat. Andy Reid, fat guy, is almost always a lovable guy. The guy could be fucking Santa Claus, for God's sake. He's in commercials where he's feeding his face. He's become much more of a known commodity from the time that he was a coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Been a highly successful coach. The team's not even the same team that it was a couple of years ago. In terms of the star caliber talent that they have at some of the skill positions, that was an issue, and yet they found their way back into the Super Bowl. Nonetheless, seems like they're universally despised. The Taylor Swift conspiracy theories are among my favorites, though, where people think that Roger Goodell has rigged the league and hired Tim Donaghy essentially to be the head of the officials to make sure that they can capitalize on the young female eyeballs that will be turning in by the zillions if they think they're going to get even a whiff, a sniff of Taylor Swift in the box there, no doubt celebrating some accomplishment by Travis Kelce. Catches a 1-yard pass, what do you get? You don't get replays. You just get constant Swift reactions. Is the NFL out to take advantage of that? I don't think to the level that they would actually get involved in rigging these games. But we've managed to stay away from the mechanics. We're going to leave that to our handicappers here that are appearing with us this week. And we're going to be joined by Troy West here in just a second. And been talking about stuff on the periphery. Well, one thing that I'm particularly fond of is trying to figure out what are the essentials to a great Super Bowl party. And we came up with this theory many, many years ago, although it might need some adjustments. And that was the 5 B's it takes to have a great Super Bowl party. And that would be booze, babes, a big screen TV, barbecue, and now that everybody has this on their phone, a bookie was always an essential. You had to have somebody that could be taking bets. Otherwise, you may as well just not throw the party. Now, if you are going to be betting the game, Bet Online. That is the world's most prominent and trusted betting platform for all of your online betting. The number one source for online betting in 2025, that would be betonline.com. Well, whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. They have the largest odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, the NHL, UFC. BetOnline, your number one sports betting source for the new year in 2025. Everybody's celebrating. Every touchdown to three-pointer and hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with the odds, the stats, and for more on every game and every play and every win than anybody else. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, we were joined here by one of our favorites out on the West Coast, and you would think that he would be gargling with Visine just to make the post time for these shows because he said, "Hey, is there any way we can do this?" Well, we're kind of locked into this time slot here, Troy West. But welcome to the program from Seattle, Washington, the heavyweight handicapping champion of the world. We welcome Troy West. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you, my friend?
Well, you got to remember, Gonzaga ended last night at about 2 a.m. your time. Isn't that
Yes.
amazing to think about? I can't figure out how they put these top 25 games on and it's an 11 p.m. Eastern time start. So, yeah, basketball doesn't end out here till damn near 11:30 at night on a freaking Tuesday. It's unbelievable.
That's not bad because, and we can have some empathy for our good friend and one of our handicappers appears with us on Friday on Bury Your Bookie, the professor, who gets heavily involved in college basketball, as do you and your clientele. And he's big on following the Zags. He's been fading the Zags lately this year. He was always very favorable in terms of betting on Gonzaga as a team that was largely overlooked in spite of their long-term success, but they haven't won the ultimate prize, and people tend to think that I mean, it may be a good thing to take a position against them. That hasn't been so favorable, and certainly has been prohibitive. But he's been cashing. I guess it was what Washington State that they lost to outright. That was probably a game that you were all over, and they're not quite as effective as they've been in the past. But I think they were laying double digits last night. And the professor who did a show with me that began at 8 Eastern time this morning uh, was of course involved in that game. So he had that 2 a.m. Time where he was finally putting his action to bed there, and I think he was on his Zags last night and cashed a ticket.
Yeah, no, listen. They've been a little bit bipolar this year, but this is a team that I picked at the start of the year to potentially win the championship. I'm still standing by that. They're in the WCC conference. They don't have a lot of games to really get up for throughout the course of the year, so you really don't know what you're going to get for them. But they played a pretty damn good Oregon State team last night and beat them 98-60. So this team's very capable at any given time to put up 100 points. Defensively, they've not been as good, but I think once they get to the tournament, Mark Few will have this team playing really good basketball in a very open field, and they'll be playing their sharpest basketball come March.
Casinos love people like you that send it in with both fists and are betting consistently. And I would imagine you've accumulated massive amounts of stature points and levels of play, Diamond Plus, 7 stars, pretty much everywhere. So, Troy West, how many Super Bowl parties have you been invited to, and what form of transportation are they willing to send to Seattle to make sure that your ass is in a seat in their sports book?
Well, it's funny you say that. Believe it or not, Defo, I love to freaking cook, man. So that's one of my biggest hobbies. So the people are coming to Troy West's place for the game.
Oh,
This will be
nice.
3 or 4 years in a row. It's funny you bring that up. I was out placing tickets yesterday, and they said, "You're coming to the party, right? You're coming to the party." I said, "No, nope. I love to Super Bowls. The one day I love to go all out, smoking brisket, pork belly, pork butt, you name it, we do it at the Troy West household. So I'll be hosting for the Super Bowl." And to your point, you'll love this.
Yeah.
Every year when people come in, I'll have a big old prop sheet. We'll do squares, we'll do all sorts of stuff. And I'll take all action up to about $100 a bet, and people can put in what they want. We'll pay them even money if they hit it. It's a lot of fun.
What kind of denomination are you playing the squares for? Because you see some outrageous ones. A friend of mine is always in a $500 a box pool, and he's had some tragic beats. Some of the toughest beats I've ever seen, where he was about to cash for like 25,000 at halftime or whatever, and it's some guy does something weird. Even though you might have been able to justify it, like McDermott, and he takes a point off the board, and they fail on a 2 point conversion, and that's changing and affecting and impacting the halftime result. And instead of having an easy 25 G's by kicking an extra point, he ends up with nothing and liking it. What's the highest denomination in the box game that you've ever gotten involved in?
The most I've done is about 100 a square. So,
Okay.
when you're doing about 100 a square, that can it still adds up, right? Still adds up in the end when you're doing some of these bigger boards. But like you said, I've seen those things go up to 1,000, 2,000 a square, and you're talking some real money.
No, it really becomes enormous when you're thinking about it. I think the final payout in a $500 a square proposition might be 50,000 to the guy who gets the final total and hits that on the head. I have no luck in that kind of stuff, so I never get involved. It's just a
I
complete
know
waste of money for me. I
Right.
always end up with 2 and 6 as my two numbers, and virtual impossibilities where
Yes.
you would
Yep.
need beyond a series of miracles to make that happen. All right, would you agree with me? I mean, it sounded like brisket. I mean, would qualify as barbecue and all of the smoking that you're doing. Are you a big green egg guy?
You know what? It's funny. I've heard good things about the green egg. I have not used the green egg. We've got the good old Traeger out here, but I've heard amazing things about the green egg. That's been on the bucket list to grab one of those things. To go one step further, a buddy of mine's actually got the Qmoto. I don't know if you've heard of the Qmoto, but it's a
Not familiar with it. No.
essentially the green egg. But this thing will get up to about 1,400 degrees.
Wow.
You can throw a steak on that thing. So
You can
that's
milk gold.
yeah, you can. You can do some really good stuff on that thing. I've heard good things.
It's weird now. I mean, you go to some guy's house and he's barbecuing and he makes a shrimp fra diavolo. You're like, well, what the hell is that? I mean, how did that come? What kind of extrapolation do you have to do to come up with a dish like that off a barbecue grill? So would you agree then? Booze obviously an essential. I mean, if you're going to go
Yeah,
dry, unless you're in Salt Lake City, Utah, or something at a party at the Osmond's house, there has to be some booze, and even they might put out a small bar or make some cocktails available. Booze, babes. I don't know how you feel about that. You're a happily married man with a family, or are babes an essential at a Super Bowl party? And some form of bookmaking. Now everybody has it on their phones, so it really doesn't matter. But
true.
you're offering that nonetheless. I think you qualify on all five counts.
We got to find a way to do the babes. I'm with you. I want there needs to be companies out there that will do kind of the call girl thing just for the Super Bowls. I think that's a no brainer. No
Like
brainer.
Charlie Sheen's house. I mean, you don't think that babes are plentiful?
Exactly.
That
Exactly.
would work. All right. Preliminary thought on the game. We've been kind of staying away from it. We were talking earlier this morning about places that you would never see or want to see the Super Bowl contested again. I've been to a zillion of the sites. I haven't been to that many actual Super Bowl games because my usual modus operandi as a guy that was on Radio Rose, which I enjoyed immensely, actually, even though they're a source of derision for a lot of broadcasters. I wouldn't go there. It's a waste. It's over commercialization. But as a broadcaster, you will never get an assemblage of superstar caliber interview types like you do on Radio Row for a Super Bowl, and it intensifies as the week goes on. So, if you start broadcasting on one of these deals on a Wednesday, you're getting some A-list celebrities, but mostly B and C in terms of football players and people from other genres of entertainment. And by the time you get to Friday, it's a freaking monster. I always loved it, and I didn't care if Michael Irvin wants to come over and spritz a little right guard deodorant under his armpits while he's on the air with me, and then give me a little shot in my face. Fine, as long as he does the 10 minutes of football conversation that you were looking for out of these guys. And I don't think you can bring your audience a more vast array of people in a short period of time as interview subjects. But now, have you been and attended many Super Bowls? Because I would have to say that the two places, I think Phoenix, Arizona, where you probably like to golf, highly overrated as a Super Bowl site. There's not a hell of a lot of shit going on there. Indianapolis was just a blatant, outright mistake. When your number one restaurant in town, which I believe is a place called St. Elmo's, is known for their shrimp cocktail. I mean, what the fuck does it take to make a shrimp cocktail? You put some shrimp in there, and maybe the size might make a difference, and some kind of cocktail sauce. And after you eat the first bite of whatever cocktail sauce you're using, it's all about the same. So, I mean, if that's your signature dish, then you're not much of a restaurant. Plus, I got aced out for a table there. We were about to be seated, and then they gave our table away to Jim Gray, of all people, the announcer, and who I despise anyway because he's so smarmy. Never get over that thing he did with Pete Rose. What an embarrassment. So, Indianapolis, I would stay away from. It was shitty weather. There wasn't a whole hell of a lot to do. Food was negative all the way around. White Castle became our place of choice. And surprisingly, the other place that I thought was horrific, well, Jacksonville, you would have to throw in there just because the city itself is a cesspool. But New York City was one of my least favorite destinations, even though I grew up in New York and was naturally able to visit with friends during the time that I was there. But outside of that, I mean, from situational standpoint, from a geographic standpoint, it was just an abortion. It was horrible. Have you been to a lot of Super Bowls? And I would imagine Vegas was probably your favorite site.
Yeah, no, actually never been to an actual Super Bowl itself. I was a frequent flyer in Las Vegas for Super Bowls for a long time until gambling became regulated out here in Washington. Now, to be honest with you, Defo, I mean, if you saw the sports books out here, you really don't have any reason to go to Las Vegas. It's
Oh
just as
wow!
good. The gambling's just as good. And honestly, the food combinations and all that stuff's probably even better than Vegas out here. So haven't had a reason to go there in a few years, but that was usually where I frequent flyer would have been Las Vegas and finding one of the parties there. And I'll never forget when the Seahawks played the Denver Broncos. I was with Charles Barkley,
Wow!
and he had put 1.2 million on the Seahawks minus the points. I think they were about 3.5, and the total was 49. And he took the over, parlayed the Seahawks with the over, and the final score was 49-7. And he
Wow!
ends up hitting both. And he threw quite the party. Did not get to go to his after party, unfortunately, but I'll never forget Charles Barkley at the window putting 1.2 million down on the Seahawks and the over, and he hit both.
And this is a place now you're talking about. He actually has to put the cash down.
Yep.
So
We were at the Mandalay Bay. I'll never forget it. We were at the Mandalay Bay, and I wasn't with him. He probably sat 3, 4 tables away from me at the
yeah,
Mandalay Bay party, but he had cold hard cash and a big old black purse with him. So he was the
having
happy camper after that one.
been to Caesars many times, it never ceases to amaze me. You'll see somebody that barely looks like they're old enough to make a bet, and you'll see some kid come in and probably isn't just his money. Maybe they're just running the money in for some other gambling ring or whatever. But you'll see a guy literally with a knapsack on his back. Some guy that looks like he couldn't buy a cup of coffee goes up to the window and will plunk down like 1 million in cash on one item or another, or maybe a combination of bets. One of my favorite incidents in that sports book, and they didn't take the bet. It turned out I had some inside information. A friend of mine who was a disc jockey in Miami had a buddy of his what was at the Katy Perry halftime show rehearsal. And so he calls frantically. I'm sitting in the sports book, and he says, Defo, are you in Las Vegas? I'm like, yeah, I happen to be sitting here right now. He goes, you got to get a bet down for me. You got to get a bet down for me. I'm like, what? What do you want to do? He says, do you have 10,000 on you? I said, yeah, sure, Footy. This was the guy's name. It was John Footy Cross, very long-term famous guy here in terms of broadcasting. And I'm like, yeah, sure, John. I just happen to bring 10,000 in my pocket that I
Yeah,
could bet for
exactly.
somebody else on the Super Bowl game. But he wanted me to get 10 grand down because his buddy had told him that the first song that Katy Perry was going to sing in a halftime show was a song called Roar. So I have no familiarity whatsoever with any Katy Perry music. I'm not a big pop music guy, and as much as I love music, it would be very unlikely to be knowledgeable about what this woman was going to do at halftime. And he tells me it's 7-5 on a proposition bet, the first song that she was going to sing at the halftime show. So I go up to the front, the desk there to make the bet and see if they take it. And I told them, maybe I could squeeze 100 out on this thing. I don't even know if they would take a large amount of money on that. And the guy says, "What are you fucking crazy? We're not taking that bet." And so finally, I got some guy offshore, some boiler room in Guam to take $100 action at 7-5. And what's weird, I mean, and you've been in these spots because everybody's re-upping at halftime. They turn the sound off on the screen. So I'm thinking, okay, here's this thing. Let's see if this 100 goes up in smoke. And sure enough, we see Katy Perry come out, unable to hear what was going on and what song she was singing, but she's on the back of a lion. And I'm thinking, we either won this bet or she thinks she's Lafitte Pink
I
Eyes.
remember that.
But yeah, that was pretty wild. All right, what's your general approach so far this week to any kind of Super Bowl wagering, Troy West?
You know what? I'll be honest, Defo, and I'm probably gonna I'm gonna go on record of being a sucker, but I'll just come out and say it, and we could talk more about it next week. But I genuinely love the Philadelphia Eagles in this football game.
Okay.
I just think talent for talent, these two teams, I give the edge. I give the edge pretty heavily to the Philadelphia Eagles. I just think Darius Slay, he's going to be a guy that's going to lock up Xavier Worthy. I think the defensive line led by Jalen Carter is going to really stuff that run game. I get it. Andy Reid's the much better coach here, but Sirianni, Nick Sirianni, it's amazing. He gets a lot of credit, but let's give the credit to Fangio and Kellen Moore, right? Those are the two coordinators that are really making things work. Kellen Moore's done an outstanding job, really making Saquon Barkley look like an MVP candidate this year, and Fangio's done a great job with that defense. I would genuinely be surprised if KC does it again, which again, you hate to say it. It's just weird, right? You look at the last 2 years and you're like, God, if you hadn't been Kansas City, you're a moron, right? And then now you're year three, you're like, really? You're going to bet against them after what you just saw the first 2 years?
Sure.
Yes, I'm going to. I just think the Philadelphia Eagles, and believe me, this is coming from a Dallas Cowboy fan who can't stand the Eagles. This is a really good Philadelphia Eagle football team. I mean, they're winning games with Jalen Hurts throwing for 68 yards, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
They just have so many weapons. I mean, you look at A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, the tight end, Gobbert's been playing great. They've got the number one offensive line in football. They've got one of the number one defensive lines in football. They're so well rounded. The general manager's put together such a good football team. And I truly actually think that this is a pretty damn good, well coached football team as well. I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles in this game.
It's funny too. They wanted to run the Sirianni out of town last year when the Eagles kind of collapsed at the end of the season after getting off to the great start. I'm with you. I mean, they have a lot of, so-called weapons that maybe are being overlooked. Zach Ertz was phenomenal in this conference championship game. The Fangio factor is one that hits home with Miami Dolphin fans and people that are from here in South Florida, where I originate from here on the broadcast. But yeah, I mean, Fangio, he couldn't stand what was going on with the Miami Dolphins last year. It was talked about the previous offseason that this was the biggest acquisition the team could have made, that they got Vic Fangio to be their defensive coordinator. And while the defense performed well under Fangio and actually wasn't horrible this year under his replacement, what he did with Philadelphia is remarkable. And they could win this game just on defense, which maybe the same could be
Absolutely.
said for Kansas City, because Spagnuolo, who wasn't well regarded as a head coach, has certainly bounced back and distinguished himself as a defensive coordinator. And oddly, it's not so much Mahomes that carried him to that 15-1 before they just threw in a towel in that last game, but it was KC's defense that was doing such a great job. And I like that Spagnuolo will mix it up a little bit. I mean, he throws that corner blitz in on the crucial play at the end of the game, which shows you, I mean, how infinite and small the margin, infinitesimal actually, and small the margin might be, because it looks like Dalton Kincaid's going to make that catch, in spite of the fact that Josh Allen threw the ball while he was, falling to his back and being rushed heavily by three different guys who had a beat on him. And he throws a Zeppelin up there. They were going to invoke the infield fly rule, and it looked like David Tyree all over again, didn't it?
It
On
sure
that call.
did. It sure did. And then, I don't want to beat the dead horse, but, it's amazing. You go back and kind of replay that game. Buffalo, the 13 minutes left in the game, Buffalo's up by a point, and they've got the 3rd and 3, and it looks like Kincaid gets the first down, and then they go back and run the QB sneak and don't get it. I truly believe if Buffalo gets that first down, they're either going up by 4 or they're going up by 8. And I really think that, we're talking about a different Super Bowl matchup. But, and like you said, they still have the chance. I mean, tough play for a tight end without a doubt to kind of catch that ball. But Kincaid, I mean, he's not there to block. Kincaid's a known, receptive tight end all the way back to the Utah days. You've got to come up with that ball in the big game. It's really a shame. It really is.
I always hate it too when these guys are right, because I have a guy that's been preaching to me. Well, I mean, he's been right the last couple of years that never bet against Mahomes. And we've seen the stats and the trends that he's a slight favorite in this game, but when he's an underdog, he never loses straight up against the spread, obviously. And that he is so especially tough in these spots. I would think every trend would indicate that you're a fool to go against Patrick Mahomes in these places. And yet, all things must pass. I go George Harrison on this one. I'm thinking this is destined to reverse, and Philadelphia has the goods this time. I don't expect either team to blow the other one out, but it would not surprise me at all, and probably I'll be putting my capital on the Philadelphia Eagles to go ahead and win the game. All right, in the meantime, we have to occupy ourselves with something. We've been diving in on college basketball. We had a weird one last night. Scotty M was on with us yesterday, Troy, and he liked VCU in their game against St. Louis, and The only thing that could have saved them in that game was there was a fight that broke out in the stands with like a minute and 18 seconds to go. And I would imagine Scotty was saying, "Hey, stop it! Evacuate the arena here." You got, and maybe he would have had the declaration of a no contest. I don't know what would have happened there, but obviously the bettors would have been happy to get their money back if they were on the VCU side. And how are you faring with college basketball and the NBA while we sit out the week before the Super Bowl?
We've been up and down. I'll be the first to say that the last few days have been really, really good to us. We've had some nice wins over the last couple of days. Had a big winner last night with Rice plus the points against South Florida. Got that by a point and a hook. But no, we've been doing pretty well. I've got some picks for you today that I like.
Oh, great!
We've been trending a lot with the underdogs. The underdogs have been pretty healthy to us. Some of those underdogs in those real close games, I sometimes feel like Vegas is just giving out too many points. So one of them today, I'm rolling. I'm giving you Wisconsin on the road. Wisconsin's headed into Maryland. They're getting 5.5. That's typically a spot where I buy a point and take 6.5 with Wisconsin, but that looks pretty darn juicy to me. Uh, Wisconsin's playing good basketball. I get it. They're on the road. Some of these, Vegas is really giving a lot of points to the home teams right now. If you go back and look at some of the spreads over the last few days, it's like, holy crap, that line is really inflated because they're at home. But I like Oklahoma State. They're getting 7.5 at Kansas State. Both teams, again, I think talent wise, very, very comparable to each other. 10-9 Oklahoma State going up against 8-11 Kansas State, but you're giving me 7.5 points. I'll take Oklahoma State in that game. And then I'm going to go with, this one scares me a little bit. Xavier just got the big win in overtime against UConn, classic letdown game, but I will take Xavier plus 5.5. They're headed into Creighton tonight. Xavier's playing really good basketball right now. Just like I said, took down UConn the other day. Give me Xavier plus the points as well.
I love natural sound effects too, because as soon as you gave out three dogs in a three-dog night, the dogs start barking right here at the
So
forest.
live.
All right, you're putting out great stuff always, and as people can appreciate that are fans of Bury Your Bookie and Troy West, you're very honest and straightforward about where you stand. So you're not one that's going to be beating your chest and saying 17-0 last week, and all of my best bets have won. My buddy Stu Feiner, known for that.
I'm always 17-0 on the bets I forgot to place, right? Or with my gut. You know what I mean?
The games that you sat out, of course. So
Exactly.
how do people get involved with Troy Wins?
Yeah, go to the website, troywins.com. We'll have a big old pop-up that pops up right away that's going to give you 7 days free of service. We're doing that right now. We're also throwing in a bargain, which we call our winner's circle. That's going to include in your membership what we do with that. We've got some live stuff, second half plays, all that good stuff. A lot of in-game stuff goes into the winner's circle. So come take a look. We're doing that all right now, 7 days free. The Instagram is It's Troy West. You can follow us there as well.
All right, Troy. Always a pleasure. Thanks for getting up with us. So I'll see
You
what I
bet.
can do about the timing of these Wednesday
Oh,
shows.
you're good. I
Okay,
appreciate it, Defo.
in a more favorable fashion. Thanks so much for being with us, Troy West, ladies and gentlemen, here on Bury Your Bookie. All right, 3 college plays. It gives you 3 dogs tonight, and the dogs seem to acknowledge that this is a good idea. He's got Wisconsin, plus he wants to bump that up to 5 and a hook over Maryland. He's got Oklahoma State getting 7 and a hook from Kansas State, and Xavier 5.5 against Creighton. All of those road dogs getting, as Troy West said, maybe an inflated number of points from the bookies. And if you're going to be in any kind of attempt to bury your bookie, always good to, as my grandmother's dying words were to me, always good to take the points. She said that. I mean, just before her eyes closed, she said, Jeff, always take the points. We hope you have success with all your wagers. We'll have much more, of course, for you tomorrow with Mike Jones, and then Professor coming your way on Friday. And then we get into Super Bowl week. We'll get into some more analysis of what might transpire in terms of props and the outcome over under the side on the Super Bowl taking place in New Orleans between the Chiefs, who people for some reason just outright despise, and the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm Jeff DeForest for Bury Your Bookie. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the show.